All right. Hey YouTube, I'm Lucky, and Bungie just recently upped the drop rate of the bottom dollar hand cannon. This is an Energy 120 RPM hand cannon, one of the strongest inside the game, especially for Crucible. Not especially strong in PvE, but in PvP, this thing is a beast. It's arguably the best primary weapon in the game. So if you want to get a roll, you got to get out there. You got to play some Gambit. It's dropping pretty frequently now, or at least for me it was. Let me know in the comment section below if you've been able to get one ever since Bungie has upped the drop rate. But now we're going to go over the god rolls, and I've created this entire guide. It's color coded, so that way no matter what roll you get, it doesn't matter. Your roll is going to have these perks on it regardless, and you can judge for yourself whether or not it's a god roll. And I'm going to go over every single perk here with you and discuss why I've graded each perk the way I have. So I'm going to start from the top left with the barrels. We've got Fluted Barrel. This gives you +5 stability and +15 handling. Now, handling is really, really good for these 120s. 120s lack, they don't lack in range, but they lack in handling and reload speed. And so anywhere you can get a little more handling and reload speed will feel really, really nice for these 120s, because prior, we were using technically 150 RPMs, but now they're 140 RPMs, and their handling is amazing, but their range is not nearly as good as these 120s. So keep that in mind. And now with stability can be really helpful when you're using a controller. So if you're on console using a controller, or if you're on PC using a controller, that can feel nice. Obviously, if you're on mouse and keyboard, it's not really that necessary. So I try to be fair in how I grade this, because obviously some of you are on controller and some of you are on mouse and keyboard, and so it's hard to judge exactly what the right choice is. But I try to be fair and give a little bit of a higher ranking to stability because of the controller players out there. So keep that in mind. Next up, we've got Hammer Forged Rifling, which gives a +10 to range with no downside. So this is definitely in the S tier category, definitely solid. And like I said before, the last one was B tier, that's why I put it in the blue. This is S tier. You really want Hammer Forged Rifling. The reason why is because even though 120s have a ton of range intrinsically, giving them a little more range actually really helps with bullet magnetism. That's where you'll end up shooting someone in the chest, like I've tested many times, or in the waist rather. You'll shoot them in the waist and it'll actually get a headshot. That's largely because of a very large increase in range on that weapon. So the bullet magnetism is amazing with high range, and also, you know, you can just shoot people across the map and there's almost no range drop off when you have a really high range 120 RPM, because they already have just insane range, right? So this is why you want to have really high range on your 120 RPM hand cannons. The next one is in the B tier category. We've got Polygon Rifling. This just gives +10 stability at no deficit at all. So maybe good for a controller player. Obviously not at all very good for mouse and keyboard. So that's why I put it in the B tier. Next one, we have Small Bore. This gives +7 range and +7 stability. Can be amazing for controller, but overall the +7 range is not as strong as the other barrels we have here. They can actually give +10 or even +15 range. So I put this at a little bit lower ranking, and I put this in the A tier. Still very strong though, +7 range, very solid, +7 stability, very nice overall. Arrowhead Brake I put in the B tier category. We get +10 handling, +30 recoil. Now, recoil on hand cannons is very hard to judge and to demonstrate, so it's hard to say whether or not recoil does truly help. Recoil tends to be really nice on like pulse rifles, auto rifles. On hand cannons, it's kind of weird to test and demonstrate that. So basically, you just get +10 handling. So I'll give this one a B tier for that matter. On to the next one, we've got Chamber Compensator, +10 stability, -5 handling, +10 recoil. Now, when there's other barrels inside this weapon pool where you can actually get an increase to range, handling, etc., you definitely want to focus on those. So that's why I gave this a B tier, +10 stability, recoil, and -5 to handling. Definitely that drawback on handling is not going to feel very good on 120 RPM. The next one we've got is Corkscrew Rifling, and Corkscrew Rifling gives +5 to range, +5 to stability, and +5 to handling. So overall, some really great stats. For controller, this barrel will be amazing, and so for that reason, I put it in the A tier category. Moving on to the next one, we have Extended Barrel, which gives +10 range, +10 recoil, but -10 to handling. Now, that handling is going to hurt with this barrel, but if you could make up for that with some of the other perks on this weapon, it could definitely be worth it, because +10 range is very, very nice. And down to the very last barrel on the bottom dollar, we have at the bottom Full Bore, which gives +15 range, -5 to handling, so the handling is going to hurt a little bit, and -10 stability. So if you're rocking a controller, you might not like this one as much, but this is the absolute most range you can get on this weapon, and if you can make up for the loss in handling or stability elsewhere, it is definitely worth it for a +15 range boost. Now, moving on to the next category, we have magazine. At the top, we have Appended Mag, which I put in the A tier category. We get +20 to magazine, no downside, definitely solid for your hand cannon. It can be nice and feel really nice to have a big magazine with these 120 RPMs, because they come with such small ones. They usually have like an 8-round magazine, so a little bit of a bigger magazine can feel really nice with these. The second perk down, we have Tactical Mag, which gives +5 stability, +10 magazine, and +10 reload speed. So all positives and all in great slots. I put this one in the S tier category because reload feels really, really nice for these 120 RPMs. They reload so slow. Magazine is always very helpful, and if you're on controller, +5 stability is going to feel really good. The next magazine is actually the first one that I'm going to put in the D category, the D tier, which is the red. You don't want this one. You don't want to use this. If you have any other magazine option on your hand cannon, use a different one. Extended mag gives a +30 to magazine, which sounds great, but it comes with a -20 to reload speed, and the reload speed on 120 hand cannons is already so bad, so reloading this thing with extended mag is painful. I've used a 120 with extended mag before, and it was absolutely impossible to use. I had to use the other magazine. The next one, however, is completely the opposite. Accurized Rounds gives a +10 to range with no downside. Very, very strong magazine perk. Going to be great for maxing out that 120 range. And next up, we have Steady Rounds, which I put in the B tier. It gives a -5 to range and a +15 to stability. So for controller players, this is going to be great. You're going to love this. For mouse and keyboard players, this is going to be the opposite. You're going to hate this. So for that reason, because it's such a polar opposite, I had to put it in the B tier. Moving on to the next one, we have Alloy Magazine, which I ranked extremely low. I put it all the way down to the C tier because fast turn reloads happen only when the magazine is empty. You almost never in Crucible want to wait until you're down to the very last shot. While the reload speed is amazing with Alloy Magazine, it's just not a great playstyle to have to actually shoot out your last bullet in the magazine. So definitely had to put Alloy Magazine in C tier. And last one, Flared Magwell, we actually put in the A tier. We get +5 stability and +15 reload, a really high boost to reload speed. And if you're on controller, you're going to love that stability boost. So that's an A tier magazine. Now, moving on to the first big perk slot, and there's 12 in each slot. So I'm going to try and go through this pretty fast and efficiently. Starting from the top, we have Rapid Hit, and I put this in B tier because there are other perks in this slot like Rangefinder and Quick Draw. And when you compare Rapid Hit to those, man, that's just, you really want to get Rangefinder or you want to get Quick Draw well before you're going to get Rapid Hit. B tier for Rapid Hit. Next up, we have Fourth Time's the Charm. Fourth Time's the Charm I actually put in C tier because landing precision hits returns 2 rounds of the magazine. You have to land 4 precision hits. You're not going to pull that off very often in Crucible. It's almost never going to happen. It is nice that you could get 2 free rounds, but that's so bizarre. It's not going to happen very often. That's C tier. Outlaw, another reload perk, had to put that in B tier. Killing Wind is a really strong perk. Final blows grant increased mobility, weapon range, and handling for a short duration. I put this in A tier, a very strong perk. Not S tier though. I don't know why. A lot of people seem to think that this is an S tier perk. This is not an S tier perk, okay? Trust me, Rangefinder and Quick Draw are much, much better perks than Killing Wind. Killing Wind is a strong perk, but it requires getting a kill, whereas Rangefinder and Quick Draw are just static perks, meaning they always work and they always perform for you. They're much better. Speaking of which, we're on Rangefinder now, S tier perk. This perk alone will almost max out your bottom dollar range. This is really why you want to get this Rangefinder. Rangefinder is like a super range perk. It gives you so much range with this weapon. Trust me when I say this, if you have never used a 120 with Rangefinder, they are amazing. Next up, we have Surplus, and Surplus I actually put in the A tier. It increased handling, reload speed, and stability for each fully charged ability. If you haven't used this yet, it's actually kind of like having Quick Draw. It's amazing. You get that increased reload speed and stability as well. So if you're on controller, you're going to love this. Surplus is a great perk. I had to put this in A tier. Next up, we got Pulse Monitor. Pulse Monitor I actually put in the C tier category because it automatically reloads the magazine when you're critically wounded, which is not something you want to do or rely on at all. You don't want to be getting critically wounded and wait for your reload to come from that. While it could be nice on the off chance that it does happen, this is not the type of thing you want to look for. This is not the type of play style you want to have when you're playing in the Crucible. Next up, we have Feeding Frenzy. Feeding Frenzy I put in the B tier again. These reload perks, B tier. After that, we have Hipfire Grip, and I put in the B tier as well. You're not going to be wanting to run around hip firing this. You want to land precision headshots. It's a precision weapon. You don't want to hip fire your 120 RPM hand cannon too much, unless maybe they're in your face, but still, I'm going to put this in the B tier category for Hipfire Grip. Next up, we have Subsistence, which I actually put in the D tier category, which kills partially reload magazine from reserves, which is awesome, but reserve capacity is reduced, and that's a big problem. You can actually run out of ammo. If you're playing like 6s, you can run out of ammo. It doesn't happen often, but it can happen, and it's definitely not fun when it does. So I have to put this in the D tier category, unfortunately. Sorry, Subsistence, but you're much better in PvE than you are in PvP. Next up, we have Quick Draw, the S tier perk. I mean, this is the one that I would like. The fact that Rangefinder and Quick Draw are in the same slot is a bit upsetting, but still it's such an amazing perk and so very strong on these 120 RPM hand cannons. Whipping out your hand cannon extremely fast and an increase to ADS time is amazing. So definitely don't sleep on Quick Draw if you have been for these 120 RPM hand cannons. And then next up, we have Slide Shot, which is sliding partially reloads this weapon's magazine and temporarily boosts range and stability. Amazingly strong perk. Almost an S tier perk in and of itself. I was strongly considering putting this weapon in the S tier category because it is borderline S tier, but honestly speaking, I do feel like Rangefinder outclasses this and Quick Draw as well. and quick draw as well, but feel free to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below if you disagree. All right, moving on to the last category now, we have Wellspring. Kills with this weapon generate ability energy. Very, very strong, especially in an ability spam meta that we're in right now in the Crucible. Wellspring is a very strong perk. I put this in the A tier category. Below that, we have multi-kill clip, which is great because you can get a damage boost, so you can start getting 2-taps. I put this in the A tier category because while it is a good damage boosting perk, it's not nearly as good because you do have to reload. And speaking of which, the next one you don't have to reload, which is Rampage in the S tier category. You get a kill with the weapon, and then without reloading, you can literally 2-tap the next person. Very, very strong perk, especially on 120s. Definitely deserving of being in the S tier category. Next up, we have Eye of the Storm, which I put in the B tier category. This weapon becomes more accurate and boost handling as your health gets lower. Now, as your health gets lower, you don't really want to rely on your weapon becoming more accurate. It is a good perk and a strong perk, but the fact that it requires you to be one shot for it to proc is just not the best setup. So that's why I had to put it in the B tier category. Next up, we have Explosive Payload. Projectiles create an AoE detonation on impact. This is good for boosting the range of the weapon and can be very impactful with flinch, but overall not nearly as strong as some of the other perks when you compare it to Rampage or High Impact Reserves, which we'll get to in just a minute. So I put that in the B tier category. And then next up, we have Opening Shot, and I also put this in the B tier category. It is nice that it improves the accuracy and range on the opening shot, and that is great for 120 RPMs, but it would be much better to actually get that range boost from something like Rangefinder rather than Opening Shot. And this weapon does not improve the time to kill, it just gives you a nice range shot on the first shot. Next up, we have Thresh, which is actually in the D tier category. This perk does not work currently in PvP. It works in PvE, but at very small rate. So even in PvE, it's not that good. Unfortunately, Thresh needs a buff if it's ever to be viable in PvP or PvE. Next up, we have Unrelenting. Rapidly defeating targets triggers health regeneration. This is a strong perk, actually, if you do get it to proc. The problem is it can be a little bit difficult to get it to proc consistently. And so overall, I put this in the B tier category. Next one, we have Disruption Brake. Breaking an enemy shield with this weapon makes them more vulnerable to kinetic damage for a brief period of time. So this could actually be a nice perk to swap to your kinetic weapon. Maybe a sniper that could body shot them, maybe a shotgun that could map them. But overall, you're not really going to shoot someone with your energy 120 RPM hand cannon and then swap to a different weapon. You're probably just going to shoot them out with the 120. So unfortunately, this playstyle is not very common or conducive within PvP. So I gave that the B tier. And then the next one is High Impact Reserves, which I actually gave S tier. I've mentioned this many times before, but rounds at the end of the magazine deal more damage. This is really, really strong in the current Crucible meta, not because it can 2-tap people. It's not quite that strong, but because it is so strong that you can 1 shot to the head and 2 to the body on people that are 5 resilience or even higher, which gives 120 RPM hand cannons such amazing ease of use. And in fact, the bottom dollar is the only 120 RPM hand cannon in the game that can actually roll with High Impact Reserves. So that's what makes this weapon so unique. This is actually the perk that you should be chasing after because it is so unbelievably rare. If I were to ever get a quick draw High Impact Reserves roll at the bottom dollar, I would be crying on stream. Moving on to the next perk, we have Demolitionist, which I put in the B tier category. Now this is great for getting your grenade energy back from getting kills. The only problem is that when you're comparing this to High Impact Reserves and Rampage for 2-taps, it just does not stack up, unfortunately. So I had to put it in the B tier. And then lastly, we have Dragonfly, which I actually put down in the C tier category because this thing does not work very effectively inside PvP. Even with Dragonfly spec, unfortunately, Dragonfly just doesn't shine that much in PvP currently. And lastly, in terms of Masterworks, you definitely want to get that S tier range Masterwork. If not, you can get the handling and reload A tier. All the other Masterworks are pretty much C tier, except for if you're on controller, you might want stability, which I would put in the B tier category. But overall, you definitely want to hit that range, that handling, and that reload. So I had to rank those much higher. Best of luck to you out there in your efforts to farm for a bottom dollar. Tag me with a screenshot on Twitter if you are able to get a god roll. And if and when you do get a roll of the bottom dollar, make sure to come back to this video and you can analyze for yourself and see if it's a god roll. No matter what roll you get on your bottom dollar, you can come back here and you can analyze the perks that are on it. And this video will serve as a sort of reference point to find out whether or not the bottom dollar roll that you got is a god roll. That's a wrap though. Thank you so much for watching the video. I appreciate you. Smash the like button if you enjoyed this video and subscribe for more.